We'll be reading from the book of Acts, chapter 25. Now, when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul, and besought him, and desired favor against him, that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me, and accuse this man, if there be any wickedness in him. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down unto Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about, and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. While he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor yet against Caesar, have I offended anything at all. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem, and there be judged of these things before me? Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. For if I be an offender, or have committed anything worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar shalt thou go. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. And when they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, There is a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him. To whom I answered, It is not the manner of the Romans to deliver any man to die before that he which is accused have the accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him. Therefore, when they were come hither, without any delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seat, and commanded the man to be brought forth. Against whom, when the accuser stood up, they brought none occasion of such things as I had supposed, but had certain questions against him of their own superstition, and of one Jesus, which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem and there be judged of these matters. But when Paul had appealed to be reserved unto the hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said unto Festus, I would also hear the man myself. Tomorrow, said he, thou shalt hear him. And on the morrow, when Agrippa was come, and Bernice with great pomp was entered into the palace of hearing, with the chief captains and principal men of the city, at Festus's commandment, Paul was brought forth. And Festus said, King Agrippa, and all men which are here present with us, ye see this man, about whom all the multitude of the Jews have dealt with me, both at Jerusalem and also here, crying that he ought not to live any longer. But when I found that he had committed nothing worthy of death, and that he himself hath appealed to Augustus, I have determined to send him, of whom I have no certain thing to write unto my Lord. Wherefore I have brought him forth before you, and specially before thee, O King Agrippa, that after examination had, I might have somewhat to write. For it seemeth to me unreasonable to send a prisoner, and not withal to signify the crimes laid against him. So here Festus, at the beginning of this chapter, calls Paul before him along with his accusers to try to find out what it is specifically that they accused him of. So as pomp and circumstance would have it, it is a sport for people to enter into judgment of those who make sport, or they attempt to make sport. Let me read from this. It's from Matthew Henry's concise commentary. Paul before Festus, he appeals to Caesar, and Festus confers with Agrippa, respecting Paul. See how restless malice is. Persecutors deem it a peculiar favor to have their malice gratified. Preaching Christ, the end of the law, was no offense against the law, and suffering times the prudence of the Lord's people is tried, as well as their patience. They need wisdom. It becomes those who are innocent to insist upon their innocence. Paul was willing to abide by the rules of the law and to let that take its course. If he deserved death, he would accept a punishment. But if none of the things whereof they accused him were true, no man could justly deliver him unto them. Paul is neither released nor condemned. It is an instance of the slow steps which providence takes, by which we are often made ashamed, both of our hopes and of our fears, and are kept waiting on God. Agrippa had the government of Galilee. How many unjust and hasty judgments the Roman maxim, verse 16, condemns. Verse 16, it reads, to whom I answered, it is not the manner of Romans to deliver any man to die before that he which is accused have the accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him. So right here it says, how many unjust and hasty judgments the Roman maxim condemns. This heathen, guided only by the light of nature, followed law and custom exactly. Yet how many Christians will not follow the rules of truth, justice, and charity in judging their brethren? The questions about God's worship, the way of salvation, and the truths of the gospel may appear doubtful and without interest to worldly men and mere politicians. See how slightly this Roman speaks of Christ and of the great controversy between the Jews and the Christians. But the day is at hand when Festus and the whole world will see that all the concerns of the Roman Empire were but trifles and of no consequence compared with the question of Christ's resurrection. Those who have had means of instruction and have despised them will be awfully convinced of their sin and folly. Here was a noble assembly brought together to hear the truths of the gospel, though they only meant to gratify their curiosity by attending to the defense of a prisoner. Many, even now, attend at the places of hearing the word of God with great pomp and too often with no better motive than curiosity. And though ministers do not now stand as prisoners to make a defense for their lives, yet numbers affect to sit in judgment upon them, desirous to make them offenders for a word, rather than to learn from them the truth and will of God for the salvation of their souls. But the pomp of this appearance was outshone by the real glory of the poor prisoner at the bar. What was the honor of their fine appearance compared with that of Paul's wisdom and grace and holiness, his courage and constancy in suffering for Christ? It is no small mercy to have God clear up our righteousness as the light, and our just dealing as the noonday, to have nothing certain laid to our charge, and God makes even the enemies of his people to do them right. That was from Acts chapter 25.